Germans would fire the 88s.
When the American troops and tanks were about 12 miles away.
To our young minds, dying in those days seemed an easy way out.
As far as you could see, ships everywhere.
The first 3 days I had no sleep at all.
The wailing sound of the air raid sirens pierces the air.
What I was fighting was entitled prejudice.
I still awaken sometimes at night.
Took a streetcar to the area in Warsaw I seldom have seen before.
I could tell the war was getting worse.
He was my sergeant, my buddy. I was his gunner.
We'll fight this war.
My name is Saul Golan. The German army invaded Poland on Friday, September 1st, 1939. On the sixth day of warfare, the German Air Force dropped 2 bombs on my birthplace, Radom. One hitting in our yard, causing heavy damage, impacting the surrounding houses to tilt, including ours. At the time of the bombing, my father was chopping wood approximately 100 yards from the explosion. Miraculously, he survived the impact. The second bomb dropped into a neighboring housing complex, killing 32 people. I worked forced labor for a German construction company, Hoch and Tief, High and Deep, in Volanov, 5 miles from Radom. I was able to come home to be together with my family and sleep overnight in the ghetto. On August 17, 1942, the Nazi Special Commando surrounded the ghetto at Radom. The Jews, including my beloved mother and my youngest sister, were terrorized by brutal treatments and killings, forced to abandon their homes with other members of my family and relatives. All the panic-stricken people marched to the railroad station, herded, and packed like a flock of sheep destined for the death camp of Treblinka, to be gassed and slaughtered and exterminated. The Nazis followed the order of the final solution to liquidate the remaining Jews. In July of 1944, an order came from the SS commander of the camp to assemble the prisoners for a roll call. At first, they were looking for volunteers to dismantle machinery and equipment at the armament plant. I stepped forward with some other prisoners, but it wasn't enough to do the job. The SS guards started to pick people to take us back to the armament plant for work. But I didn't have any intention to work. Instead, me and a fellow by the name of Tuchman found a hiding place in a pocket of a drop ceiling, and observing from the top down the SS guards with dogs running wild, searching for the missing escapees. The morning after the escape, my partner and I stopped in a village near the Jewish cemetery to look for food. We were invited to a house, and a woman treated us with bread. After we left the house, we were surrounded by a group of 6 Polish youngsters. Forcefully, wanting to take us to the German police for a reward of catching Jews. Fortunately, a passerby stopped with his bike. He said to them, "Hey guys, let them go. They have the same blood as you. They are human beings." The youngsters obliged and let us go. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the 6 million Jewish people who have been annihilated, tortured, and gassed in the Nazi death camps for the crime only of being Jewish. No grave with inscribed names or ages was left for those 6 million Jews. As a Holocaust survivor, being a witness, the message to the civilized world is to remember and not to forget, never again.
My name is Bruno Binnenfeld. On a foggy day of March 1943, I find myself riding in a boxcar with my grandparents, mom and dad. In the car there have been about 30 to 40 other people, young and old, huddling together to keep their bodies warm. Boxcar didn't have any windows, and the air came through the cracks of the wooden planks that the car was built on. On the third day, the train slowed down and the steam engine came to a stop. Voices of German soldiers shouting and sounds of barking dogs gave indications that we reached our destination. As the door opened, I saw a row of German soldiers with the machine guns at ready and others holding German shepherds on a leash. Most of the dogs had been lurking forward toward people disembarking the train. However, one was quiet and reminded me of our dogs that we left behind. Women in a Wehrmacht uniform helped us disembark and told us to leave our suitcases behind, since we will not need them anymore. Slowly we moved into the direction of the group of officers who took our ID cards and directed us in two different directions. My grandpa and grandma went to the right, and that was the last time I saw them. My dad, mom, and I went to the left and were directed to one of the wooden barracks in an endless row of gray buildings surrounded by barbed wire. From there on, Dad left every day in the morning and returned in the evening dirty and exhausted, while Mom worked with other women around the barracks. We received a meal once a day in the morning, and the main part was a piece of cornbread that we eat with sauerkraut or beans. After a while, I asked Mom if there is any bread left over since I was hungry. I still remember Mom's eyes full of sorrow, trying to explain to me, "Not today, maybe tomorrow." Every day before going to lay in a wooden bunk, we did our prayer and Mom told me a story or two. One night, after the prayer, Mom asked me to put a hand under the straw pillow. To my surprise, I found a piece of cornbread. When I asked my mom where does this bread come from, she told me that angels bring it, answering to my prayer. I was puzzled and asked her, "Are there Jewish angels?" She smiled and said, "There are angels for all people on earth." As time passed, I realized that I was the only one who got 2 pieces of bread a day. After 2 months, my mother got very weak, and at the end of the 3rd month, her fragile body was laying in a wooden bunk. A couple of days later, she died. Next evening, Dad and I prayed as usual, and after the prayer, I reached under the pillow for my bread. It wasn't there. With all the pain and grief of losing Mom, natural instinct of hunger prevailed, and I told my dad, Angel didn't put the bread under the pillow tonight. To that, Dad, embracing me, said, Yes, I know. He was busy taking Mom to heaven.
When after Pearl Harbor, without questioning anybody or anything like this, and they rounded us all up and put us into camps. And this is how our evacuation got started. From there, we went to Poston, Arizona. They called them relocation camp, I called them concentration camps. And I was quite aggravated because of the fact I figure myself as an American. And I haven't done anything, and how can they treat me like I was an enemy? And this is when they came around and asked for volunteers to form the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which was going to be an all Japanese-American combat team. I was so surprised that almost everybody was for volunteering. I volunteered too. And with us, it was, well, we've got to prove to the United States people that we are just as much Americans as they are, if not more. When we were in France and the Vosges Forest, that was one of the most hellish place you can fight a war. When the Germans would fire the 88s, they fired it into the trees, and you get that tree burst that comes straight down at us. And we had taken quite a beating. Like the company I was with, we ended up by having 17 people. So they immediately took us out of line, and the 36th Division came in and replaced us. One of the units got surrounded by the Germans. So we were immediately called back to go in and try to rescue them. When we went in, we had something like almost 300 men. When we finally made the rescue, we had 17 men left. The 36th Division has never forgotten this. They couldn't understand how a small group like us was able to get through and make the rescue when they still had 3 times the amount of men we had and they couldn't move. We would take that extra chance for somebody else wouldn't. And this is the reason why we got through. We were sent back to Italy again. But our artillery, they were the ones that went into Germany. They were the first ones to reach Dachau, the concentration camp of Jews. And that is in the history books. The Japanese Americans coming into Dachau and rescuing all of them. A lot of those guys who were in the 522, their parents are in a concentration camp in the United States, but they have to go over to Europe and rescue the Jews that are in concentration camps. You know, that's something I think everybody should think about. And Truman took over. We immediately got a Congressional Medal of Honor for one of our men. And President Truman turned around and gave a speech on how great of an outfit we were.
You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you've won. Keep up that fight, and we'll continue to win.
And he pinned a special medal on our flag. Can you imagine the pride everybody must have felt? That makes me feel like I'm a special American.